And good evening. It's a Friday night special. Lockdown live. It's Skeetnet. It's Manx talk. And what a week since we were last on the screen. What's been happening? Derek, you've got the view from across the Irish Sea there. How are you taking it in?
Oh, it's been like watching a slow motion train crash. I'm really sort of a little bit speechless with it. It's a real shame, but for it to have fallen down and escalated as quickly as it has been a real surprise. I didn't expect it to go quite as west, quite as quickly as it did. But everything apart from that over here is all right. We have wine. It's Friday night, so let's get stuck in and disseminate and dissect and see what we can find out.
So, Michael, we've got a government that is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. What's your view down in Douglas?
So last week we were here talking about wearing animal onesies as people go to the office for the MSPCA's Dress Like an Animal Day. Whereas now, this last week, many people have been wearing a onesie from home, and it's such a rapid reversal. And I guess at the outset, we got to say, what a heartbreaking, what a difficult, and what empathy we have for people who are infected. The latest stats as of today, there's 59 new cases of new people being infected, 163 people currently active with cases of coronavirus on the island, and two of them are in hospital. And let us hope that they recover, because obviously we lost so many neighbours, friends and family last year that let us hope that we lose no more. And I imagine, Jed, one of the things that you would relate to is your family. And so I remember it last year when we were doing this, and your family, the disease, the virus ran through your household. But you all recovered, right? And so that's got to be something that we can all hopefully look forward to or be optimistic about.
I think there's a lot of fear out there. There's the unknown aspects of this virus. Imagine if you're working in a residential home, you're working with vulnerable people, you've got elderly relatives, and we seem to have been in this state of safety, haven't we? We had it in the palm of our hands. In fact, I'm just wondering about all that gloating. Was it a month ago, 3 weeks ago? I mean, I'm sure if Piers Morgan is ringing the Chief Minister's office, he's just getting the answer phone each time, isn't he, Derek?
I would have thought so. I mean, like you say, hubris leads to nemesis, as somebody tweeted to me a little while ago on a private conversation. This is one of these things now, isn't it, really, in terms of this is really the time for men of force and vision, as they say. If anything is going to get us out of this, it's a little bit of humility and a lot of leadership, because what I don't get from any of those press conferences is the leadership team, Komen members, Dr. Henrietta to some extent, taking the public with them. You look at the change from, did he mention the Great Manx public once today? I don't think so. The change in public opinion and public attitude, the anger that is there on social media is absolutely tangible. So, they perhaps need a little bit of a coaching session in terms of, listen, how do we change our tack, change our approach, get the public back on side and start to rebuild this and take things forward, because there's an awful lot of work to do. We've not seen the end of it yet. It was 163 cases in the community at the moment. I mean, that is absolutely shocking. It was the first day yesterday since I've left the island where I actually felt grateful for being here. And, that's I think that's quite telling.
Well, Michael, I mean, we are all in this together, and we're all pulling together. I look back to last Saturday lunchtime, and the cracks were opening up, and we had the plea to stay in, don't go out. If you've got a business, if your livelihood revolves around the nighttime trade, you're going to give it up after a dreadful January where money has been tight, and this was a payday weekend. And the majority of us, I'd say 99% of us, played the game. But I don't think everybody did, Michael. You must be seeing what I'm seeing on social media, that there's a few chinks in the armour, and they're up in Laxey where Saturday night was all right for spreading.
Yeah, look, it's a tragic situation whereby, apparently one of the bars or restaurants and hotels that stayed open has looks to be a pretty high risk location, and there was a lot of lack of clarity there on that Saturday. If you look back at what the chief minister said in his public briefing on Saturday afternoon, and in the official statement, there's no actual request to the small businessmen or women to close their their premises. But there was in response to one of the questions from Alex Bell half an hour in, right? And it's difficult because I can imagine the emotional and the practical difficulty that for these restaurants, these bars, these hotels that have lost so much business, lost so much financially, to do it again. Like it's expensive, right? And I'm not a wealthy man, but if someone said to me, "Hey, look, it's going to cost you another few £1,000s to do the right thing," of course you want to. No hotel owner or bar owner wants their place to be a circulation of disease, and but it's also and it's different. So it's such a tragic outcome, and my heart goes out to the first of all the victims, the people who are getting sick. And to a lesser extent, the good hoteliers and the good restaurant owners who did the right thing, the good taxi drivers who didn't operate, and they're left out of pocket. And it's tough. Everyone lost that day. The folks who closed lost money, and the folks who stayed open, got sick.
Just on the run up to Saturday, there was evidence around to suggest that things were just starting to escalate. I think we were hovering and we knew what was going to come. There was a lot of talk, and yet they didn't push the button. And then we had that mix-up on Sunday. Just go back to you, Michael. Just walk us through what your perspective was of that.
Look, I think you asked a very similar question 2 weeks ago on this very live stream, where you asked, what should we be doing? And at that live stream, I said 2 weeks ago, this is not a binary yes, no, on, off situation. There's a degree of risk. And so whether that risk is 1% or 5% or 87%, what would have been great 2 weeks ago, as you said, Jed, the idea of wearing masks 2 weeks ago, is to go back to that. And so I guess it's so frustrating that the government's hubris, they wanted to make it's either perfectly safe, as they said on Sunday, or it's everyone goes home and closes on Saturday. And it just makes me wonder if we'd listened to your advice, Jed, of 2 weeks ago, let's wear masks. What about do some things to lower the risk? What a different situation we might well be in. And it's tragic, and it's so frustrating.
And Derek, you must view this as a operational expert in managing emergencies. What's your take on it? Was it really that simple? Was it a black and white decision on Saturday? Did they fudge it?
I think one of the difficulties is that we don't know what information set the Komen are working on. We don't know what decision model they're running. And we joke about me being an operational expert. I've written a book on decision making, which is due for publication later on this year. It's a passion of mine. I'm a bit of a decision model evangelist, if you will, and that's why I've sort of banged on about this since the start. Last March, I really want to know what processes they are using, because I suspect with what we knew in the public domain, when you apply a threat and risk assessment against it, and you look at what is the likelihood and what is the outcome, what is the likely outcome going to be, I think it really sort of did fall in favour of an option of locking down then being the sensible decision. We used to say in the COPs, it's a lot easier sometimes to start off here and then de-escalate. Make sure you've got everything locked down and then reopen bits as soon as whether it's a crime scene or whatever. Because if you go gentle, you lose evidence along the way. You lose the impetus. You lose the upper hand. So it's it's a bit like go large, go early, really. And I think maybe what's happened is there's been a political element which has overtaken the scientific element on this one. I'm always speculating because I say they don't share the data sets, they won't share the decision-making processes, that's all secret. They won't even share that with members of the House of Keys, let alone the great unwashed. So we don't know. We don't know how these decisions are being arrived at.
Well, I'll throw this one over to you, Michael. You've got a group of people in charge of the Isle of Man, and they've done well in many cases, and there's been decisions that have been made. You can imagine that when those doors have been closed, there's going to be some discussions about the way ahead, and extending beyond that, you've got MHKs that aren't involved. We've got 24 across the island and so forth, and we've got our MLCs. But have you noticed how quiet it is? How quiet? There's nobody really speaking out. I noticed Laurie Hooper's been quite vocal, and there's been a bit of a whisper, say, from a few others. But what's happening? There's going to be an almighty kick-off in there, for sure. Must be.
So, look, I think a lot of these politicians, they don't want to be seen as hindsight Harry. They don't want to be, saying, hey, look, if you'd done this 2 weeks ago, it'd be fine, because we can do that. And so what really should be happening is 2 and 3 and 4 weeks ago, people should have been, actively campaigning on the public record saying, hey, we should be, changing this path in this way. And that's when the mistake was. The mistake of the members of Tynwald was 4 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago to not say, hey, we need to beefing up the protection. Like last August, when I ran for Tynwald, I was very clear, like, let's beef up the testing and avoid a second lockdown. Let us take the precautionary steps that lower the risk. 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about this issue, the three of us here on this video cast, we talked about exactly that issue of publish the science and stop treating it as such an extreme yes or no. It'd be better to wear masks a lot more often than to be under house arrest versus licking lampposts, as it were. Like, it's got to be something in between those two extremes.
We got there, Jed.
I've just got the front of the Courier. It's one that I've kept, and it's from second week in February, and it's steam packet staff can't jump the jab queue. And I was doing Chris Robertshaw a disservice there. It was raised in Tynwald that the ferry staff should be given the vaccine, but that's a whole different topic altogether. But there were some MHKs. Who knows what's going on in the background? Hey, Michael, there must be all kinds of communication going on.
But it shouldn't be happening in the background. It should be happening in public. 1,000 years ago, the Norse came to this island and they had this idea of creating a forum whereby I think the phrase at the time was the important men of the community. Obviously, it should not be the important men in the 21st century, but it should be the community leaders should be having these debates in public. This is what Tynwald should and can be doing. We should have politicians who are on the record saying, "Hey, look, I want more testing," or "I don't." And it's, I don't, it's no good for them to be Harry Hindsight.
Do you think that Tynwald should be almost sitting daily at the moment? Because I mean, certainly what I pick up is that a lot of the Keys feel excluded from the whole decision-making process, and some of them may actually be just sitting there quietly watching COVID slowly hang itself. I don't know. There might be some political tactics within that, but it's that sort of the old thing that General Patton used to say. If everyone's thinking the same thing, somebody isn't thinking. Well, it seems to me that a lot of politicians who are outside of COVID aren't being given the opportunity to think. That these decisions are being made. They're finding out about them at the same time as the public, which is absolutely shocking. Let's put them on the back foot with their constituents. And it's putting noses out of joint. It's just not fair. If everybody, there'll be good. If you've got 24 people together, putting stuff into the mix, looking at the decision processes, adding in, well, you don't know this and you haven't mentioned this or whatever. You increase your intelligence base tenfold, and you also increase your ideas base tenfold as well. It seems to be too small a tactical team now that's dealing with this, and as a result, as will happen, they seem to be running out of ideas. I'd really like now to see that big change in leadership and some real clear radical thinking going on. Look at what's been done elsewhere. Look at where the wins have been in the likes of New Zealand and stuff, and let's start picking the best of the best from the worldwide picture. And God, they're going to have to sort out this vaccine program. It's like snail's pace. Why is it taking so long? Why is it so slow?
I'm hearing that they weren't perhaps prepared as what they could be. It was referred to on the presser today and yesterday, where we've got two, and you'll appreciate this, Derek, from your days in the constabulary, where you've got, I think, data systems that don't talk to each other. Okay. And this has caused quite a problem. So I think it's the hospital data system doesn't talk to that of the GPs. And there's been a few holes and gaps appearing, and this has meant that the staff round and about are having to go to manual searches. Okay, and it's almost saying, look, if you haven't heard from us, give us a call. And this simply isn't good enough, because we knew that the vaccine was going to be coming yonks ago.
But I can't believe that anybody that's in a vulnerable group won't be on a referral list to a specialist. Whether it's respiratory, whether it's cancer, whether it's, I don't know, allergic to jam butties, I don't know. But they will be on a list of a specialist somewhere. That can be searched at the centre from the hospital. So, this alleged contention between the two systems sounds like a bit of a whitewash to me. On an island of 80,000 people, if you can't rapidly identify your most vulnerable people via your healthcare systems, we've got a real problem here. Because whether it's contagion or a pestilence or whatever, if you can't isolate your at-risk group or groups very, very quickly, you are going to be looking at serious casualties. And that would appear to be what's happening here.
Well, it's obviously exposing some weaknesses that will have to be fixed. Michael, just talking about jabs, you might have seen the press conference before, I take it, and there was a topic of the police, that we've got 50 officers out of action, which is an eighth of the force, I don't know, 10th of the force. How many?
Quarter of the force. 243 police officers. So you've got about 180 operational staff, 180 operational constables and sergeants on the front line. So
but potentially that is a huge issue. And Gary Roberts, he's actually put himself forward, which is quite unusual. No, in something like this, and he said his officers need to get jabbed. The response was, well, we've got prison officers, we've got fire brigade personnel. Where do we start? But they've actually chosen to jab the steam packet staff, and the majority, or I think 100% of personnel at Noble's Hospital, and this includes those that are going to be serving out the sandwiches. Where do you stop? Where do you start, Michael?
Yeah, so I was down at the vaccination hub at the airport again this morning. Helping out, essentially helping, relatively frail people get in and out of wheelchairs. And one of the things that I was, speaking to some of the other volunteers, for big chunks of today, there just wasn't anyone coming through, which I believe is because there just weren't enough people booked in to come and get their vaccines delivered. We currently have over 11,000 vaccines currently in storage on the Isle of Man that have already arrived and are currently being in freezers, and so to get 248 people, from the police, or 243, however many it is, it's a relatively trivial number, and so like we've said, and I've said, repeatedly over the last 4 or 5 weeks here, is that it is not vaccines that save lives, but vaccinations. And so that's why it's so frustrating. I was literally standing there. I actually sat down in one of the wheelchairs for 10 minutes because there's no one coming through. And it's frustrating because you see on the front line, there are these experts, these nurses, who are giving their all to do it, and they're doing, everything that they can reasonably expect it. But these leadership at the top, they're not experts. And we got to differentiate between the real experts, who are the surgeons or the pilots or the people jamming the vaccine, and these fake experts such as the leadership, because they're very different skills, and it's quite different.
Maybe you could have given the skirting boards a second coat whilst you were in between jobs. I mean, this is the whole thing, isn't it? This is the whole fact, the whole lack of objective focus. What do we need to do? We need to get those out of that fridge via a healthcare professional and into the shoulders of our population. Tell you what, hang on a minute, let's just do a bit of joinery first and spend 90-odd thousand quid, which I don't know how many more vaccines that might have bought, how much more overtime it would have paid to cover police overtime, to cover for those that aren't there. But it's just that, there is this huge lack of focus in terms of what is the mission we're trying to prosecute here. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to get the vaccination rate up, trying to get as many people safe as we possibly can. Seems to be completely lost somewhere in the ether. A few bits of 3x2, some hardboard and a couple of screens, that would have done the job. It doesn't have to look Gucci for doing the job that was required. And
I think, in fairness, they did set up some temporary vax centres at Peel and Ramsey. They were only small numbers. It was like in the hundreds, 120, something like that, but they proved very popular and accessible. Now that we've been covering quite a lot of topical chat, and if you are watching, please comment, add your opinion, ask a question. We're grateful to the viewers this evening, and we'd like you to get involved more. Now, something which has popped up on my radar and that of others, there are kids at school and they're due to take exams, GCSEs and A-levels, and it's not too far away now. They're due to start in May and June, and this lockdown, I think we can universally agree, it ain't going to be for another 2 weeks, is it? Michael, I think you're pretty good on the maths on this, where we've got to get to zero, haven't we? 0 cases, and then it's got to be a time span hence from that, probably a couple of weeks on zero or a week on zero, I'm not quite sure.
So it is if we continue to eradicate, but also I want to be very optimistic here about the future, and to give credit to the future plans, is that because the deliveries of the vaccines are expected to escalate, the government expects to be able to do 5,000 vaccinations a week going forward, which would be a huge increase and it'd be a great increase. In which case that means that every adult, 18 or higher, should be vaccinated in the next 12 weeks. So at some stage, we're going to, on one hand, we obviously want the number of people to be infected to drop. On the other hand, we also have the angle going up in the other direction of the number of people who are vaccinated. And so those two lines will interact in a interesting and weird and perhaps unpredictable manner. And so it's quite, I'm very reluctant to predict how long this lockdown will last, because I simply don't know. And I think what would be good now would be to have a few more leaders in our community to similarly say, I don't know, because this sort of certainty of saying that things are perfectly safe, as the government said 5 days ago, are tragic, and that sort of extremist talk. We need to get away from being it perfectly safe to everyone under house arrest. We've got to find a way through, and so in the next 2 weeks it'd be great if we could eradicate it. But let's say we're looking ahead 4 weeks. Well, then that's 20,000 extra people who should be vaccinated. By which case that's a big chunk of the Manx population.
I think it's gone beyond that now, to be honest with you, because I think what the public will not accept is this seesawing between lockdown and open. A more mature approach might be right now to drop the nationalist jingoism and say, right, let's just align ourselves with the UK picture here. Things are doing all right here. Schools open on Monday, which is a big step forward. Vaccination program well on top of, and whatever way you look at it, the Isle of Man cannot start to function and operate normally without the UK position being, as good as or better than. We've just today taken the decision to cancel the Port Club GB trip in May because there is so much uncertainty. We looked at whether or not we should actually postpone it and put it back to September. We haven't done. We've actually postponed to 2022 because there is so much uncertainty. If they just take the mature decision now and align with the UK, perhaps the Northwest, and get the picture aligned, everybody will know where they're up to. Travel can open, people can start moving back and forward, seeing their loved ones again. I think it's a much more mature approach. They got lucky with virus elimination. I mean, you know my view on it, Michael. I picked up on it very, very early that it was a possibility. They got there, but now this is the ticket they hang the hat on. I think that ship sailed now, because you're not going to get to that position now. I would say probably until the end of June, July, the way things are going, to be absolutely sure about it. This isn't going to snuff out like the last lockdown. It's going to take a lot more work to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I think between the three of us over the past year, we've been pretty accurate with our forecasts and predictions, and I'll hang my hat on it's going to be 4 weeks minimum before we get things going. But what I was alluding to before was the kids, the students that are at school, and they've spent years preparing for their GCSEs and A-levels. And so far, there hasn't been any sign, not that I've seen, of what the outcome is going to be for those exams. Okay, now last year they got shelved, but at the moment they're going to be going into Easter under lockdown, then they've got Easter holidays, and then before you know it, they're out of school within a few weeks. And really, these kids need to be, they need to be told now, these exams are off or on, or what are we doing, wasting our time revising? I think, come on, anyone out there is watching it, I think there's a lot of stress amongst our teenage population, and added to that, a lot of the friends are going to be suffering with this virus and they won't know what's going on. Now then, I've got a comment in the box for Derek, from James. I think of a young policewoman being assaulted and spat on by a thug, and government will not give her the jab. This is madness. What does Derek think? And that is from James.
I think James is absolutely spot on. The difference between the steam packet staff and a police officer is quite profound. First of all, the steam packet know what their drills are. They know on any day what it's going to look like. Load the ship, sail across the sea, unload the ship, back we go. Most of them are socially distanced anyway from the general public. There's only usually about 12 or 15 people on the boat anyway. They can actually put in control measures which keep them safe. Police officer, spontaneously reacting to incidents, not knowing what they're going to. A core part of the job, whether we like it or not, is still rolling around fighting on the floor with people. You cannot, as Gary said, police at a distance. So for me, in terms of threat and risk, in terms of priorities, the cops should have been there each and every time. Even the fire service, it's a generally socially distanced sort of job, because everybody's cordoned off and it's just the team that's actually fighting the fire or doing the rescue or whatever. The risk is a lot lower. Ambulance frontline staff, I'm sure they've already been inoculated because they are dealing with the transfers and the transport to hospital and so on. So for me, it was a no-brainer in terms of assessing threat and risk and actually making a decision as to who you would prioritise. I honestly think that the Manx government, the Comyn in particular, has really cocked a snook at the police force. I think it's shown that where they sit in their list of contention, and I think they've been badly let down, and it's really, really disappointing.
Well, hopefully they won't be attending any scenes of disorder. I think the whole industry, the construction section has been, put back to barracks. Michael, hopefully the police won't have to deal with any incidents, surely?
Hopefully not. And, I think it's fair to say that I've been pretty critical of the government, and I'm certainly no bag carrier for what they were for them. And so when they do something good, I'll say so. When they do something bad, I'll say so. And so when it comes to the vaccination thing, the JCVI across in the UK, the Joint Committee on the Vaccination and Immunisation Program, they looked at how many people you have to vaccine to save a life, and at the elderly level, so amongst 80 and 90-year-olds and people in care homes, basically it's something like you vaccinate for every 160 people you vaccinate, you save a life. And so once you vaccinate everyone who's aged over 50, you solve about 99% of the preventable deaths, says the JCVI, the British scientists on this issue. So what we're talking about here is how many people do we have to vaccinate to save a life of police? And so their data and their scientific research shows that you'd need to vaccinate 50,000 police officers to save one life, right? Because the vast majority of police officers are relatively young, relatively fit, and therefore unlikely to die. And so I think that the scientific argument to vaccinate the police officers is unclear. Like, there's not a very good scientific argument. But what there is there's a good moral argument here. And the moral argument is that these people are putting themselves into harm's way. We should do what we can to protect them. And so there is in the Isle of Man perhaps a second way, and that is that at the end of each day we've discovered this week that there's some number of vaccines that are at risk of going to waste, somewhere in the order of up to 15 at worst case. And so what I think might be a really good middle way here is to kill two birds with one stone, and that is the police officers are obviously on duty during the day, for a big chunk of them. And so just say at the end of the day, when you're getting close to the end of the day and you have an idea of how many vaccines are at risk of being wasted, ring up the police, say, hey, looks like we're going to have five spare vaccines today. Put those 5 into the police as a way of saying thank you. So not necessarily because there's a strong scientific thing, but because it's a good moral argument. And so if there happens to be 4, if there happens to be 6, whatever that number is, the police will recognise that we want to give this to the police as a way of saying thank you. And so on any given day, because they are also on duty, they'll be able to adjust according to the availability. Because some day there might be only 2 vaccines going spare, another day there might be going 12. And so maybe there's a middle way in doing something like that addresses the interests of both parties here.
I think you can bet your bottom dollar that there ain't going to be any more spare vaccines anytime, anywhere. They're going to be all used up. There's no question.
I've a friend who's been doing a similar role to Michael at a vaccine centre in the UK. His wife's inside sticking needles in people. He's at his furloughed, so he's going down volunteer.
Just to be clear, Derek, I'm not inside by any stretch.
No. His wife's inside. He's out in the car park.
Oh, okay.
Doing the same thing that you're doing. At the end of the day, there was some excess vaccines. He's had both doses as a result of that, because it's better doing it for somebody rather than doing it for nobody. So nothing has gone to waste in the UK. There's always been that mop up, people getting phone calls at relatively short notice, can you come down, and so on. So there seems to be, and this is the thing that frustrates me time and time again with our beautiful island. It's a tiny place. This is dead easy to do, and I can't understand how there's this continual tripping over of cock-ups. There's no need for it. It's a village. It's everybody knows each other. You've usually got half a dozen people in your phone book. On your iPhone, you could say, hey, listen, fella, we've got a couple of spare vaccines. Do you want to come down? It doesn't matter who gets it, as long as somebody gets it, and it doesn't go down the drain. I think it
needs that flexibility, that dynamic approach. Now, I've got another question from a Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, and I think this will be one for Michael, because you've paid some attention to this one. Do you think that school staff COVID positive on the Friday, 4 loose known cannons Saturday, and sent 10,000 kids into school back by stated threat prosecution? So I think this is about on the Sunday presser, where they said, it's absolutely safe to go to the school on Monday. As you can see, I think we've all seen the video that the 3 of them endorsed, that you must send your children to school, and then we're just seeing the events unfold this week. So that's from Dr. Ben. Have you got any comment on that one, Michael, or have we done that?
Yeah, look, I think the point there is that there was risk. And so that's the same risk that you and I and all 3 of us spoke about 2 weeks ago. And so it's talking about the coronavirus in this binary sense is silly, right? Because, I think the example I used, 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this issue is that on the Wednesday before the first case came through the steam packet, I thought, there's a 1 in a million, if that, chance, right? But then when there was a case on the Isle of Man, when I was doing the food bank deliveries, I started wearing a mask because the risk is no longer one in a million. It's now one in I don't know what. And so because a lot of people in the Isle of Man don't know what that risk is, they're not able to take proper precautions. So you can't simultaneously say people should take proper precautions for themselves, but simultaneously keep the information away from them. So just be open and transparent. The public can be treated as adults.
Well, I think we've covered that one. Has anything else popped up on your radar this week, Derek? Has anything come to mind where you are in deepest, lovely Lancashire?
I think it's just really the fall in rates now. In Lancashire, there's a couple of areas. My postcode being one of them, the PR postcode area is still quite high, but that's more sort of focused on the city centre. The rural areas are very, very low now. Society is really functioning pretty well, and literally, other than masking up if you're popping into the supermarket or something like that, it really is just a way of life. People are used to it. People are looking forward to bigger gatherings, going to the pub and so on. But we've adjusted and adapted to it, and this is why I think it's so important, for the island just to set a stall out now. Into a new normality. This is going to get better eventually, but you don't want to be seesawing in and out of lockdown. So we've been pretty lucky, really. We're getting there, and it's been a good week on a number of levels. Yeah.
Michael, I mean, it's in the palm of our hands now, isn't it, really, on the Isle of Man? Everybody has got to play the game. Some of us did last Saturday and some didn't, but really it's got to be super strict enforcement of really the rules at home and with your neighbours and your friends and what have you. Is not to play silly devils, isn't it? We can do this, can't we?
Well, I don't know if it's about enforcement, but rather it's common sense,
no,
right?
I used the wrong word there. I used the wrong word because we can now talk about who needs enforcing. We've enforced some people that shouldn't have been, castigated, maybe.
And so what I mean by that is, like Michael Josem, what am I? I'm 39 years old, so I'm not in the high risk category, but I'm relatively, what am I? I'm middle aged, I guess. And so judging by what the government has said, I should be able to get a vaccine dose within about 10 or 12 weeks or so, right? So God, this another lockdown makes me sad. It makes me sad on many levels. It makes me sad for the mental health. It makes me sad for the physical health. It makes me sad for the jobs. But it's only 10 weeks to go, right? And I'm optimistic. I'm trying really hard to be optimistic about that. And I tell you what, the way that the UK has led the world, apart from Israel, of course, for the vaccines, thank God for that. We're only 10 or 12 weeks away for us 39-year-olds, and so in that sense, that makes sense. You don't need to make a law that forces Michael Josem to stay inside, because I've been, as far as I know, I've been safe this whole year, right? Another 10 weeks, well, what does it matter, right?
It's interesting you picked up on Israel there. Whatever your political views are, you cannot help but admire that nation in terms of its ability to grip a situation and drive it through and solve it. I mean, I remember seeing something a while back about the desalination program they've got. They recognise there's going to be worldwide water shortages over the next 3 decades, so they've gone big for that. Entebbe is still the most remarkable story in terms of rescuing your country people I've ever heard of. And again, with the vaccine, bang, let's just get this done, hammer it. And, as well as a fairly isolated country goes, which is the Isle of Man is, what a great exemplar in terms of some ballsy leadership and driving things forward. So, yeah, lots to learn from elsewhere in the world, I think.
Well, I've got a call from Rainbow Cupcakes, and I'm able to put the question on the screen so viewers will be able to watch this. I've just sussed out how to do it. So Rainbow Cupcakes, and it looks like it's an image of a mongoose, I think, maybe, but maybe you could let us know who you are. Right, please discuss the fact that the emphasis has been put on children as driving the latest transmission chain. To my mind, the data is skewed by testing strategy. So, where are we going with that? Do you think the government have kind of shifted the blame over, well, these numbers are now, it's just down to kids at school, and we kind of, we're not going to be able to do a Scooby-Doo style trace to the steam packet here. Is it a bit of a smokescreen, Derek?
I think if you want to, you look at the way data is manipulated and interpreted. If you've got some spare time, listen to the Planet Normal podcasts, which is done by a couple of Daily Telegraph journalists who try to put the alternative interpretation in terms of the data sets and so on. And there's all sorts of things. It's like, there's 120,000 COVID deaths in the UK. Well, I've got news for you. A lot of them weren't. I mean, my 85-year-old brother-in-law went into hospital with heart issues, COVID-free. He had the jab. He contracted COVID whilst he was in hospital. Fortunately, he's out the other side now, pacemaker fitted, and he's back at it. But had he died in hospital because of the heart issues, he would have been a COVID death. He wasn't a COVID death. He wasn't even symptomatic. So these are the things where, we say this, that, and the other. Surely kids have got a part to play in it, and I think it's been played down until now. But we've clearly got kids are now a big vector, and something needs to be done about it. But how on earth you actually incisively get in there? I mean, they're the most communal and social animals of the human species. This isn't going to be an easy one to crack, even if the schools are shut for an extended period, which I suspect they will be.
Well, I'll just bounce it over to Michael about this, because these press conferences can be a bit of a roller coaster journey, and tracing, is it the Kent variant or is it the steam packet variant? We haven't got Dr. Glover to tell us what variant it is. What's your take on it, mate?
Well, Jed, I'm old enough to remember when it was racist to call it the Wuhan coronavirus. So I don't know how it's somehow socially acceptable to call it the UK or the South African or the Brazilian or the whatever variant. But it's almost as if the Chinese government tried to impose a little bit of political manoeuvring on that one, rather than anything else. But to get back to the question from the I don't know, call of the right, or what, I don't know what the right word is there. About why children seem to be the primary people transmitting it here in the Isle of Man is it's probably for a few different reasons. First of all, the Isle of Man is inherently going to be a very small sample size, and so that can lead to a few oddities because of we have it gets into one part of the community, it does not spread. Secondly, I suspect that people in care homes and relatively elderly people will have, some of them will be protected by vaccinations, and some of them will be protected by the stronger protections that we did not have 12 months ago, and so therefore keeping it out of that. But I think also one of the other things that might be a little bit going under the radar here is here in the Isle of Man, because we have a relatively large professional industry, professional sector of lawyers and accountants and so on, a chunk of those people, in e-gaming as well, will still have been working from home throughout this period. And so whereas in the UK or other communities where manufacturing is a much bigger part of the economy, which obviously, manufacturing obviously requires people to attend a place of a factory or a place of manufacture, right? Whereas because we have relatively small manufacturing industry here on the Isle of Man compared to, and this is in percentage terms compared to elsewhere, that might also be something that where are the places that people congregate? Well, in elsewhere it is workplaces and schools. Here in the Isle of Man, if we do not have people congregating in workplaces as much, then it is, the only place remaining that people can get it is in schools, plus also, think about this, restaurants, bars, and so on. And so where have we seen people be transmitting it? Restaurants, bars, and so on, plus schools. And
supermarkets.
Have they been in the Isle of Man?
Office of National Statistics published that 16% of transmission cases were as a result of the retail setting. So
Sure. Well, we've not seen that just yet in the Isle of Man. So maybe it has happened that we've not got that data on. But I think that hopefully that answers our listeners' question.
Well, thank you. Yes, rainbow cupcakes, sample sizes, and surveillance testing is where I'm going. So we're just approaching the 50-minute level. There's been so much that we haven't discussed. We haven't discussed all these new candidates for the election in September 21. Are people just sensing that there's going to be a change? Is there been a change in mood towards the people who were put in power 5 years ago? Is there going to be a leadership challenge, maybe? Is there a tirade of aggravation going on behind the scenes in Comyn or in the House of Keys? There's so much going on. We'll have to catch up next week, but I think one of you is going to ask me a question about something.
Your interview with Courtney Henning, or Courtney Adam Lawrence, because he doesn't accept the principle of surnames.
What?
Did you not?
He's a free. No, I don't listen to anything that he says, to be honest with you, because it's like David Icke reincarnated, isn't it? It's. But go on. Sorry, I digress. What was he talking about?
I had an engagement with Courtney. Absolutely fascinating, and it was good to give someone a platform and listen to their views. They don't appeal to everyone, and I must admit a lot of the material was quite difficult to assimilate. It was like a machine gun, really. The guy's like turbocharged, fueling the airwaves. But you must have some experience from Michael.
Well, I think that he talked about medical miracles and so on, and I think the key medical miracle of Courtney is that he manages to speak for 20 minutes at a time without drawing a breath. And so that was something special. But fundamentally, what he was talking about there is he does not believe in the germ theory of disease transmission, right? And so that's a pretty esoteric view. This is an idea that the Jews had in the time of ancient Moses law. It's an idea that the Indians had 1,000 years ago, and it's an idea that the germ theory that the diseases are the function of bacteria and viruses. And by transmission from one person to another. It's something that's been pretty widely accepted in Europe and in European civilization since the 1800s. And so it seems to me like he's if you boil it down to, that's what his fundamental belief is, that there's no such thing as viruses or as bacteria, and that diseases do not spread from person to person, but rather some sort of wholeness. You don't eat right, or you don't, you get it infected by the 5G or the light or whatever.
Yeah.
That's right.
These people, they're about, and I must
they
admit,
walk amongst us.
And I must admit, he did have some valid commentary about personal health and so forth, and everyone's entitled to their view. But what I've got to talk about now is that we've got the great Manx commentator that is known as Bonzo Slater. I'm going to put his commentary on the screen. I'm really chuffed with this new little gadget that I can mess around with.
You've got a new toy there.
A new toy.
What you do need to do is you need to enable Derek and I to see whatever.
I like to go get another glass of wine. We've been here for hours, yes.
We're nearly done, so I'll just read through it and then we can. The comments are up on the screen. So, right, Bonzo. I love his stuff. Very quick-witted and kind of ahead of it, very intuitive. So Bonzo says it's not that government have made bad decisions, it's that they've made no decisions. They have only acted when all other options have been exhausted. The Quayle and Ashford are so desperate to continue the we've, as in they've done so well, narrative as espoused on Good Morning Britain to Prince Gammon, Piers Morgan, and they will gamble with the island's health when we're the ones who've lost. So I think that kind of touches on what we've been talking about. I just hope that when we do come out of lockdown, God willing, that we just keep quiet about it, boys? Let's just, not brag about it. We did say this could come back and bite our arses.
Absolutely, and I don't think I think it's probably a little bit unfair that on Comyn, I'm sure they are trying the best, but I'm just not entirely convinced that they're working with the right set of tools at the moment. There's got to be a way out of this, and it just seems a little bit like schoolboy football at the moment in terms of the way that they're running around after solutions. But let's hope that when we reconvene next week, we've got some much better landscape to commentate on, and perhaps we can have a dig into some of the early bird candidates for the September elections if they go ahead.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think the local elections are done. It will be delayed till maybe autumn time. So I think we'll just draw a line under that. Michael, what have you got planned for the weekend? Are you still down at the hub?
Well, I'm not playing sport or anything this weekend. I don't like I'm in lockdown. Like, what am I going to do? Might rearrange the furniture in the living room. Like that's about the extent of it.
And Degsy, what's on? Have you got a special selection from Aldi?
Yes, we've got some rather fine budget champagne, but my weekend is now. I've been appointed as a lecturer in policing at the University of Central Lancashire, so I'm now playing rapid catch up with all the jobs and projects that I started to try and get them finished in short order before I take on that role. So tomorrow is fixing insulated plasterboard to the Jip Liner metal carrier system in my upstairs in my garage. So rock and roll, I tell you, this is what lockdown is really all about. At least we can still get builder supplies. Thank God for that.
And many congratulations for that, Derek, that appointment.
Thanks.
You're absolutely pure gold, and you'll be an asset to our friends over in Lancashire. So I think we'll just draw a line under that, and we'll reconvene next week when I'm sure we'll have much more to fill our reflectiveness. I think it's been great that we've got so many people engaging and commenting on what we've had to say, so we'll keep that going. But adios, guys. We'll catch up next week.
See you next week.
Have a good week.